Okay, soldiers, they're coming after you. The U.S. government and its enforcer, the IRS, which has been weaponized. I'm not using that term lightly. They have indeed been weaponized. We'll see that. They're coming after you. You need to understand why they've been weaponized. You need to understand what you need to do in order to remain on the road to financial independence and to maintain any financial independence that you currently have and build upon that. Even in this new environment where we have a weaponized IRS that is focused intently on solving America's debt problem by basically seizing the assets of a portion of the population. Now, when I say a portion of the population, you got to understand that a lot of people think this is going to be about billionaires and, multi-billion-dollar companies. It's not. You're going to be surprised, or maybe you won't, who this is all about. Who exactly is being targeted.
See, in this world, there's two kinds of people, my friend. Those with loaded guns and those who dig. You dig.
Okay, so it's us, okay? The poor and middle class. We are the ones that are going to be targeted in this new environment. A new environment wherein the IRS is weaponized against the American people because of situations like this. Okay, look, we refer to this quite often, and every time I do, this number is higher than it was the video before. And look how fast it's increasing. Look at the profligate spending that America, the United States of America, is engaged in. And look at your portion of this debt as a U.S. taxpayer. And you better believe the IRS and the U.S. government in general, they're going to tax the living daylights out of you, and they want the money. Now, you need to know how to soften this blow on you. Now, look, philosophically, what's going on is we as Americans, especially in a certain socioeconomic class, we are being, our government is attempting to turn us into economic slaves, okay? And you might say, oh, there's another word, slaves. It's a strong word. It's an appropriate word because whenever you go out and use your labor or your intellect to produce something, and then someone takes a portion or all of that labor and either gives it to someone else or takes it for themselves, then you are a slave. Now, this year in America, Tax Freedom Day 2022 was April the 18th. Now, you might say, what is Tax Freedom Day? Well, that's the day that for most Americans, if you just use all of your compensation up until that date, April 18th, if you use all of that just to pay your tax bill, then on the 18th, now you're finally free. Now you're making money for yourself. So for an entire quarter, for just over a quarter of the year, you're working for taxes. You're working just to pay. That money is just to pay taxes. Now that date has gotten later and later into the year. Back in 2020, it was April 15th. Okay, ironically, that's the same day your taxes are due. But now it's April 18th. And we'll see what it turns into in years down the road, since we're starting to realize higher taxation, especially with the Inflation Reduction Act, which is a lie. So yes, you might as well go ahead and say at that point, a portion of your labor up until the 18th of 2022, April, you are a slave. I'm not being hyperbolic. If you don't get to enjoy the fruits of your labor, what are you? All right. So now let me say this. You need to pay your taxes. This is the first tip. Okay. I know a lot of people have problems with the concept of taxation, but the reality in this country is most people that are earning income of some kind, they owe taxes. So we need to pay our taxes. Okay. If you have a big issue with the concept of taxation, then you need to find an organization that lobbies for tax relief or tax abolishment. Okay. But until that magical, mystical day occurs, you need to pay what you owe in taxation. Now, here's why. Because this is a financial literacy channel and financial news channel. So we deal with what is. And I want you to stay on the road to financial independence. And you are anything but financially independent if you are sitting in a federal prison cell for tax evasion. Okay, let's just deal with the real. All right, so pay your taxes. Now, I was thinking about doing this video and I said, you know what, if you can't beat them, join them. That's a good way to think about this, because what we need to do is we need to take a look at ways that we can take advantage of what's in the tax code that allows us to go ahead and avoid certain taxation. But before we do that, I owe you an explanation, because I did say that the IRS was being weaponized. This story didn't get a lot of play, but early in 2022, the IRS went out and purchased $700,000 worth of ammunition. Now, you go out and purchase $700 worth of ammunition and see, you'll probably get a knock at your door. But the IRS, which is a tax collection authority, purchased $700,000 worth of ammunition. Now, I could be totally in the dark, but I have never heard of someone who owes taxes acting as if they were Pablo Escobar, or, you know, when they come to get you for tax evasion, you barricade yourself and you start acting like Uday and Qusay Hussein, you know, OK Corral style, Alamo style, reaction to that. I've never heard of that, but yet and still, they did do that. So indeed, the IRS has been weaponized. I don't know what they're preparing for. Maybe they know that they're going to get so many more of these agents and they're going to be really assertive in their collection efforts. I'll tell you another thing. 87,000 agents or personnel that they're going to hire. A Marine division is 22,000 personnel. So the IRS has basically been given the go-ahead to hire the equivalent of 4 Marine divisions. 4 Marine divisions, okay, in order to collect taxes. So yes, they have been weaponized. I want you to understand, I use the word weaponized and slavery seriously. Now, I told you before, you need to pay your taxes. So how do we do that? Well, I tell you one thing. I think that you would do well to get some professional tax advice. All right, number one. Now, let's look at a study here from the University of Syracuse. They did a study that shows that the IRS oftentimes, well, 5 times greater than anybody else, the IRS audits the lowest income wage earners. Okay, we got several charts we could take a look at here. The lowest income wage earners filed 23,620,209 returns, and they get audited 306,944 times. Compare that to everybody else and all taxpayers. Now, millionaires filed 617,505 returns in the time frame that we're looking at 2021, and they ended up getting the fewest audits at 13,725. Now, you might say, well, what's going on there? Why is it? Oh, it's very simple. Because millionaires have resources. They have law firms, tax attorney firms that are, they've retained. They've got CPAs, okay? And corporations, because I know somebody's going to ask about, well, they're raising taxes on the corporations too. The corporations are going to pass that on to you at the checkout line or the point of sale. You're going to pay the corporate tax, not the corporations. They're just going to raise raise the prices of what you pay. That's why the Inflation Reduction Act is actually going to result in more inflation. So because the poor and middle class typically do not have access to tax attorneys and fancy CPAs, they are more vulnerable to these audits because you've got guy who works at, he's a truck driver, or a lady who, she is a director at, the phone company. These people cannot be expected to accurately interpret the 75,000 pages of the U.S. tax code. So what do you do? Again, if you can't beat them, join them. Think about this. I would encourage people not to do their own taxes. You ever heard of the saying, a lawyer who defends himself, a lawyer who represents himself as a fool for a client? I believe the same is true when it comes to taxes. Listen, it's 75,000 pages, and the code is always changing, all right? Always changing. Now, you may not be able to afford a CPA, but I wouldn't trust this to TurboTax. Sorry, TurboTax, but we're talking about keeping people out of prison and keeping people out of a situation where they have to owe the IRS for the rest of their lives. I wouldn't trust that. Don't do it yourself. There are places where you can go as a poor or middle income person to get your taxes done, and they are relatively affordable. Now, a couple of things. You need to interview these people. You need to ask pertinent questions. When you sit down with someone who is going to file your tax return for you, you need to understand how much experience that person has, okay? You need to understand that they know, when was the last training class you went to refresh your skills and understand changes in the tax code. You need to ask those kinds of questions. The other thing you need to do is you need to understand that when you file a tax return, doesn't matter who did it for you, if there is anything in that return that the IRS feels as though is not right, then you're on the hook. You can't say, well, my CPA, they messed up. No, it's just like in court. If you're on trial for your life and your lawyer messes up, guess what? Well, she may walk free. She will walk free. You will be escorted into lockup and put on a bus and become prison bound. So you need to understand those things. Now, as I always say, and you know this was coming, you need to seriously consider starting a business if that is one of the things that you may have always wanted to do. First, the advice for someone who may have wanted to start a business. If you want to do that, keep in mind there are tax advantages to doing that. However, at the point where you start a business, one of your business expenses is going to need to be a competent and qualified CPA, okay, certified public accountant. You're going to have to make that an expense, and you're going to have to interview that person thoroughly in order to vet them and make sure they know what the hell they're doing, because this is your financial life we're talking about, okay? Now, if you own a business and you've been kind of footloose, fancy free, and that sort of thing with your tax returns, you need to tighten up. You really, really do. You're not going to win against the United States government. They don't sleep, and they've got trillions of dollars to fight you, okay? So just do the right thing. And in order to do the right thing where taxes are concerned, you need to have quality representation if you own a business, all right? You need to have quality representation, like we said, if you're going to Jackson Hewitt, or I'm not endorsing them, or H&R Block, I'm not endorsing them, or any of the places that may exist. There was one place called Liberty Tax. Okay, they were big in the Baltimore area. And man, oh man, they messed a lot of people up. And listen, here's a hint, because this is what happened at Liberty Tax. Have you ever seen these guys dress up as a Statue of Liberty? They're waving, and that was like Liberty Tax's thing in Baltimore, okay? But if you sit down with someone who suggests that you in any way do something you know is not right, or in any way play around with your tax return and represent things different than the reality, you need to get up and get out of their office, okay? You need to take your little box of receipts, get up, and get the hell out of their office. All right, so the last thing I'm going to say is when you start this business, or if you have a business, get that quality representation, but also you need to start researching those things that are out there for you that legally allow you to either defer taxation now, or in the future, or absolutely avoid taxation in the future. We talk about it all the time, people. In the first category, deferring taxation now are your qualified accounts, 401k, 403b, traditional IRA, HSA. Future, your permanent life insurance policy, your Roth IRA, okay? All right, so they're coming after you. You need to be in a position where you're straight so they won't come after you. And so you can just keep your mind on doing what you need to do to make money, okay, and to invest in assets. Don't be knocked off track by this. Again, this is a situation that exists. We got to deal with it. Let's deal with it legally and let's deal with it profitably. All right, now what I want you to do is I want you to watch this video about this bill that we're talking about, the Inflation Reduction Act, and how this thing that we get into the meat of what exactly is going to happen with this bill, what they're going to spend on it, how much they're going to spend. You need to understand where your money's going. Okay, guys, I'll talk to you soon.